Godzilla vs. Kong is the fourth installment in Legendary's shared monster universe. It stars Millie Bobby Brown, Alexander Skarsgård, Julian Dennison and Rebecca Hall in a chaotic disaster movie which pits these two titans of pop culture against one another. While it definitely delivers upon the promise of a gigantic boxing match, the story is predictably paper thin and entirely dwarfed by several destructive action set pieces which override much of the story. For those that are interested in the very much subsidiary narrative, plot-wise the film follows a group of specialists who have to help Kong return to his ancient homeland, while another group headed by Bobby Brown's character investigates Godzilla's recent display of unprovoked violence. If you're expecting a really thoughtful or intellectual film which justifies Kong fighting Godzilla in a meaningful way, you may be disappointed, although I don't think anyone expects a film about a humongous lizard fighting a giant gorilla to contain a really impactful story. While I enjoyed it for what it is, the film does so little to develop these characters, and it's fully hoping that you're willing to turn your brain off and go along for the ride. I think the visual effects are brilliant, but story-wise, it does the bare minimum to justify its existence. Predictably, the fights are spectacular and the CG work is immaculate. The monsters' faces sometimes articulate how they're feeling as they're battling, which I thought was highly impressive. So the VFX department definitely deserve a pat on the back, although the film itself hasn't succeeded in achieving much beyond that. Director Adam Wingard aimed for audiences to have an emotional connection to these monsters, although it presents itself as a Roland Emmerich-inspired, larger-than-life action movie, which contradicts some of the statements Wingard's made in interviews. I recently reviewed Batman v Superman in my last video, and this film uses some of the same plot beats. I won't spoil anything, but it feels like Warner Brothers have copied the ending of that movie and pasted it into this one. The film, unsurprisingly, lacks a really creative story, but makes up for a small part of that in unapologetic carnage and destruction. Thematically, it very briefly heeds a warning about technology's potential to destroy nature, but you have to dig underneath the chaos to pry that meaning from it. It shows little interest in making any thought-provoking statement about nuclear anxiety as Godzilla has in the past, or the desperate quest for survival that's intrinsic to King Kong. It's fully focused on getting to the action as quickly as possible. I'm not saying that every movie has to have a really thoughtful subtext, but ultimately there's no big ideas here, just big monsters which will please some people and annoy others. A fan will inevitably cut together all of the battles in a YouTube video, and you could just watch that without having lost much in the process. It's not as bad as many major blockbusters, it's not offensive or lewd, but it lacks anything of any real substance. My main problem is that the characters are only necessary to keep the plot zipping forward. The only character I remotely cared about was a young girl played by Kaylee Hottle, who communicates with Kong through gorilla sign language. Her character allows Kong to show some humanity, which is something the film never really achieves for Godzilla. Aside from Hottle's character, the humans provide little function other than explaining the actions of the monsters, although sometimes it feels like there's an inexplicable telepathic connection between the people and the beasts they're following. I'm not even going to go down that road. It's the kind of film that would be so easy to pick apart. Its logic is all over the place. But if I'm being positive, it's a clear attempt at course correcting from the dreary Godzilla King of the Monsters, which was supremely boring and went on for far too long. Fortunately, this edition comes in at a swift hour and 45 minutes. It speeds through the setup, they start fighting, there's a bit of story development for Kong, and then we get to the main event. I think the visual effects in the movie are solid. It's a better decision to set these movies in the daytime. I imagine it must be a lot more work lighting the monsters properly, but I found it more involving than the dreary nighttime destruction sequences in King of the Monsters that were sometimes hard to fully distinguish. So better than the last movie, potentially better than the 60s film, and enough mayhem to please a small child. Ultimately, I can't claim to be a major fan of Godzilla or King Kong, although fans of these MonsterVerse movies will definitely get more out of it. The best thing I can say about it is that it performs exactly as sold on the tin, but if I turn to critical thinking, there has to be a better script which more effectively makes you care about Kong and Godzilla before they start fighting. You'd think Warner Brothers could find that story for $200 million, but evidently not. I was expecting Pacific Rim with monsters, and it met those expectations. So if you just want an evening watching two CGI monsters punching each other, then you may get some enjoyment from it. I think most people know what to expect from a film like this, and as long as your expectations aren't sky high, you shouldn't be all that disappointed. Anyway, that's all I've got to say about Godzilla vs. Kong. thank you so much for watching the video. Be sure to leave a comment if you took anything away, and I'll catch you all next time.